Welcome back to our channel. Found a Washington quarter? Look closer, it might be a hidden gem. Like and subscribe for more valuable coin discoveries. The minting floor in 1985 pulsed with precision. Machines clicked and roared in harmony as presses struck thousands of United States quarter dollars every minute, each coin bearing the familiar image of George Washington on the obverse and the proud eagle on the reverse. The Philadelphia and Denver mints, responsible for producing the nation's circulating coinage, had honed their process into a seamless operation. No one expected anything unusual that year. 1985 quarters were as standard as they came. But behind the sterile rhythm of the production line, something small and nearly invisible slipped through the cracks. The quarter in question wasn't noticeably deformed. It didn't flash glaring signs of an error, no obvious off-center strike or missing elements. Its anomaly was hidden in nuance, a near-perfect coin with an imperfection that took time, patience, and a trained eye to recognize. At first, even the few who came across it didn't know what they had. And for over a decade, its significance remained buried, unnoticed, tucked away in change drawers and coin jars, waiting for someone to look close enough. That someone was Angela, a part-time antiques dealer and lifelong coin hobbyist from Spokane, Washington. In the fall of 2002, she purchased an old leather pouch from an estate sale. Inside it was a mix of early U.S. coins and more modern currency, nothing flashy, mostly loose change. But Angela had a habit of inspecting every coin that crossed her path. Late one evening, with a mug of coffee and her handheld magnifier, she began sorting through the lot. One quarter stood out, not because of any striking flaw, but because something about the rim felt uneven beneath her fingers. She flipped the coin, examined the edges, and paused. The reeded edge, the finely milled border designed to prevent clipping, was thinner on one side. When she looked at the obverse, she noticed the mint mark D was slightly misaligned, sitting higher than expected, almost brushing against Washington's ponytail. Stranger still, the word Liberty seemed subtly doubled, the letters faintly shadowed like they were vibrating. It wasn't dramatic, but it wasn't normal either. She set the coin aside and moved on, but her mind kept drifting back to it. Over the next week, she revisited the piece again and again, comparing it to dozens of other 1985 quarters. None had the same edge thickness variation, none showed the odd mint mark position, and certainly none had that peculiar doubling on the lettering. Curious, Angela contacted a local numismatist who agreed to inspect the coin. After a brief evaluation under magnification, his tone shifted. "This is something," he murmured, adjusting the lighting. "It's not just machine doubling. It's hub doubling, real, full doubling. That's rare for a coin this modern." The discovery led to a deeper dive. The coin was sent to a major grading service, and after weeks of anticipation, the verdict came in: 1985, D quarter dollar, double die obverse with partial collar strike and misaligned mint mark. The certification was clear. The coin had been struck with a misaligned obverse die that caused a true doubling effect, particularly visible in Liberty and In God We Trust. The partial collar strike resulted in uneven edge thickness, and the off-center mint mark added a further layer of rarity. The error had likely occurred during a brief moment of mechanical instability, perhaps a miscalibrated die installation or a faulty press cycle. Whatever the cause, the die had shifted just enough to produce a small batch of flawed quarters before being replaced. Given the high-volume nature of quarter production, these few errors were quickly overwhelmed by millions of perfect specimens. Angela's discovery reignited interest in the 1985 quarter, a year previously ignored by most error hunters. Collectors across the country began re-examining their pocket change and coin rolls. Several more specimens eventually surfaced, each one bearing similar traits: the subtle doubling, the partial collar strike, the oddly placed mint mark. But most were worn, circulated, marred by decades of handling. None matched Angela's in sharpness and preservation. Auction houses began taking notice. The coin was featured in several numismatic publications, with detailed breakdowns of its characteristics. Experts highlighted the precision of the doubling, noting that while not as dramatic as the 1972 or 1995 double-die Lincoln cents, its modern rarity made it incredibly desirable. The partial collar strike, usually considered a minor error, added further intrigue. It suggested the coin may have been one of the first few struck before the press fully stabilized. Angela's decision not to sell the coin immediately proved wise. As awareness grew and more collectors competed to own a known specimen, the coin's market value began to climb. Initial offers came in at a few $1,000s. Then 5 figures. One prominent collector of Washington quarters offered to fly out personally and negotiate. The story spread through collecting circles. Coin clubs debated the origins of the misalignment. Some believed the obverse die may have been improperly seated after maintenance, others suspected a hubbing flaw that went uncorrected. Whatever the root cause, its limited run, likely fewer than a few hundred, meant that only a handful of these coins could still exist in any condition. The mystique of the 1985 quarter grew with each passing year. Collectors began referring to the error as the ghost shadow quarter, due to the ethereal doubling and the way light played across the mismatched edges. Unlike more obvious mint mistakes, this one demanded attention, patience, and a certain reverence for detail. Angela, content with the discovery itself, eventually placed the coin on long-term loan to a private collector's gallery in San Francisco. There it sat, encased in protective glass, its unusual features magnified and annotated, drawing attention from coin enthusiasts and casual visitors alike. It became part of a traveling exhibit on modern U.S. mint errors, its modest face value dwarfed by its numismatic importance. By 2025, the value of verified specimens of this error, particularly those with strong doubling and intact edge distortion, had stabilized in the upper tiers of the collector market. While circulated examples traded between $6,000 and $18,000, high-grade, uncirculated coins with full certification commanded between $40,000 and $98,000 depending on condition, provenance, and clarity of error. What began as a background player in a box of old coins became a showpiece of modern American coinage errors. The 1985 U.S. quarter, once unnoticed and ordinary, found its voice through a silent shift in machinery, an accidental whisper engraved in metal, heard only by those willing to listen closely. The year 2006 marked a continued celebration of American heritage through the 50-State Quarters program, a series that captivated collectors and casual coin users alike. That year, the North Dakota quarter emerged as the 39th release, featuring 2 majestic American bison against a backdrop of sweeping plains and a rising sun. Struck at both the Philadelphia and Denver mints, millions of these quarters entered circulation, each intended to symbolize strength, freedom, and the enduring spirit of the Great Plains. There was no expectation that anything would break routine. After all, the minting process had become a fine-tuned system, nearly immune to flaw. But as with every story of rarity, something unexpected always finds a way to slip through unnoticed. It started, as many stories like this do, not with fanfare or headlines, but with quiet observation. A coin roll hunter named Jonathan from Des Moines, Iowa, had spent years combing through bank rolls in search of silver, errors, and anything that whispered of unusual history. In the spring of 2018, he received 20 rolls of quarters from a small credit union. As usual, he took his time inspecting each coin under the soft light of his desk lamp, his eyes trained to catch even the most minute deviation. At first glance, one North Dakota quarter seemed entirely normal. Its imagery was clear, its fields clean, and its edges readed just like the thousands of others. But when Jonathan tilted the coin under light, the buffalo's eye caught his attention. There appeared to be a ghost-like doubling of the eye ridge, not bold enough to scream for attention, but strange enough to provoke further scrutiny. He flipped the coin over. The word "United" on the reverse showed faint, almost spectral doubling. He wasn't sure if it was true hub doubling or simple die fatigue, but it was enough to raise his pulse. He magnified the obverse and spotted something else. The 2006 date showed a light die crack running from the inner loop of the 0 through the lower portion of the 6. And then, along the rim, another irregularity. The reeded edge was incomplete, appearing slightly flattened and smoothed at the top right quadrant. These weren't isolated flaws. Together, they told a story. Something had gone wrong during the striking process. Something rare. Jonathan cross-referenced his find with known minting errors. There were a few documented North Dakota quarter errors, die chips, small clashes, and even some off-center strikes, but none that matched what he held. A combination of doubling, die crack, and partial collar strike made it a standout. He posted high-resolution images on several numismatic forums. Most members were intrigued. A few believed it could be a legitimate doubled die. One experienced collector privately messaged him with a cautious but excited suggestion: get it professionally graded. He submitted the coin to a top-tier grading service and waited, anxious, watching the mailbox. When the package finally returned, the grading results surpassed expectations. The coin had been struck with a slightly misaligned die, creating minor but authentic doubling on both sides. The reverse showed doubling not only on United, but also faintly along the buffalo's foreleg. The obverse displayed a clear die crack near the date and, most interesting of all, the rim bore signs of a partial collar strike, leading to the flattening of edge reeds. The grading company labeled it a genuine mint error, mint state, and assigned it a high numerical grade due to its uncirculated condition and minimal surface flaws. As word of the coin spread, curiosity grew. Only a handful of similar examples began to surface, all seemingly struck within a narrow production window at the Denver Mint. Some bore doubling with less clarity. Others had the edge anomaly without the die crack. None matched Jonathan's specimen in combining all three features so distinctly. The numismatic community began referring to it as the Trinity error, a coin marked by triple imperfection, unified in one unexpected outcome. Collectors of the State Quarters program, which until then had focused more on completion than on errors, suddenly turned their attention to 2006. Could more of these anomalies be lurking in circulated quarters? Could there be additional varieties with stronger doubling or more extreme collar errors? The buzz reignited interest in a series that many had assumed had already yielded all its surprises. Jonathan declined early offers, choosing instead to study the coin's increasing visibility and rarity. By late 2020, a second high-grade example surfaced in Ohio, with similar though slightly fainter characteristics. It sold privately for over $18,000, establishing a new benchmark for value. Auction houses began including error-classified North Dakota quarters in upcoming sales. Demand rose gradually, driven less by media hype and more by the organic curiosity of seasoned collectors. The true appeal of the coin lay in its understated drama. There were no bold strikes of missing designs or massive planchet flaws. Instead, it was a dance of subtle imperfection, details that emerged only when viewed at the right angle, in the right light, with the right knowledge. It wasn't a coin that shouted for attention. It whispered its story quietly, to those patient enough to listen. By 2023, major coin grading services had authenticated fewer than 10 comparable North Dakota quarters with the same triad of flaws. Most were found in circulated condition, worn and dull. Jonathan's original piece remained the sharpest, the cleanest, and the most complete representation of the error. Collectors viewed it as a hallmark of modern minting anomalies, a symbol of how even in the era of mechanical precision, the unexpected still found a way. The coin's notoriety also led to broader investigations into the 2006 Denver Mint operations. Retired employees recalled minor press calibration issues during that year's production run, particularly during high-volume output periods for the State Quarter program. Though official records did not specify the error, those close to the minting process confirmed that rapid die changes and limited downtime sometimes led to minor alignment problems that could account for the anomalies now being found. By early 2025, the market for verified examples of this North Dakota quarter error had matured. Low-grade pieces sold for several $1,000s, while higher-grade coins drew competitive bidding. Jonathan's coin remained the most talked-about example. An elite collector and patron of a private museum reached out, expressing interest in acquiring the piece for an educational exhibit on modern minting flaws. The offer ranged from $30,000 to $78,000, depending on whether a permanent sale or long-term loan was preferred. Jonathan took a breath, admiring the quarter one last time under the soft light of his desk lamp, the same lamp under which he had first spotted its gentle mystery. It was still just a coin, made from base metals, minted in millions. But it had become a testament to chance, patience, and the quiet thrill of discovery. In a world defined by precision, the flawed few rise to tell a deeper story. The year 2008 carried with it the momentum of a numismatic movement that had captured the imagination of Americans for nearly a decade. The 50-state quarters program, launched in 1999, was nearing its end, and by then, millions of people across the country had become everyday collectors. The Oklahoma quarter was among the final releases, showcasing a scissor-tailed flycatcher in mid-flight, wings outstretched with a delicate grace, soaring above wild Indian blanket flowers. It was a fitting tribute to the state's natural beauty and a strong final impression as the program approached its conclusion. Minted at both Philadelphia and Denver facilities, tens of millions were produced, each one appearing indistinguishable from the next. But hidden among them was a deviation so subtle and silent, it would take years to be noticed. For most people, the Oklahoma quarter was simply another coin in their pocket. It passed through hands at gas stations, sat in vending machines, and was rolled up in banks, carrying with it no hint of anything extraordinary. But a few coins from the Denver Mint held an imperfection that was born from a rare moment of instability, something that only a dedicated eye could discover. Miles from the noise of collectors' forums and auction houses, a retired geography teacher named Lionel was sorting through his grandson's coin album in a quiet suburb of Tulsa. It had become their shared hobby, a weekend ritual that bridged generations. The boy had just received a roll of Oklahoma quarters from a local bank, and the two sat together, flipping each coin beneath a desk lamp. It was Lionel who first noticed something peculiar. The flycatcher's wings seemed distorted, not in shape, but in detail. The lines of the feathers were doubled, as though a second shadow of the bird hovered just above it. The words, Oklahoma, and 2008 also showed ghost-like impressions, light, but undeniable. The edge of the coin felt oddly smooth at one point, as though the standard ridges had been compressed or even half missing. Lionel reached for a magnifying glass and leaned closer that he knew enough to realize what he might be holding. The doubling wasn't the result of post-mint damage, and the rim's distortion hinted at a partial collar strike. There was no missing design element, no wild misprint, but the imperfections aligned with something much rarer, a legitimate hub doubling, paired with a structural strike error. He set the coin aside and contacted a friend from his local coin club, who urged him to send it in for professional grading. When the coin returned from evaluation weeks later, the report confirmed what Lionel had hoped. The doubling on the reverse was verified as a true double die, not mechanical or worthless shelf doubling. The bird's feathers and tail had doubled tips. The inscription, Oklahoma, showed splitting at the vertical lines of the letters, and the partial collar strike had left a portion of the coin's edge unreaded, appearing compressed. It had received a high grade for mint state condition, and more importantly, it had been authenticated as a genuine mint error. The discovery sent quiet ripples through coin collecting circles. At first, few believed such a late-series quarter could contain an error of this caliber. The state quarters program had operated with extremely high-quality control by its final years, and by 2008, both mints were running at peak efficiency. But the evidence was there. Lionel's coin wasn't alone. Over the next year, a few more examples began surfacing, primarily from Midwestern states. Though most were found in circulated condition and suffered from wear, they shared the same telltale traits: reverse doubling, slight die shift, and partial collar flattening on the edge. Collectors began calling it the ghost wing flycatcher, due to the illusion of twin wings caused by the doubling. Forums debated whether the doubling had resulted from a hub misalignment or a die installation error. The mint offered no formal comment, unsurprising, as only coins of extreme deviation typically drew official investigation. The mystery only deepened the fascination. The Oklahoma quarter's reputation evolved from a pleasant tribute coin into an object of closer scrutiny. Coin roll hunters turned their attention to 2008 quarter rolls, especially from Denver. Error coin specialists began searching for stronger variants of the doubling, theorizing that the first few coins struck after the die shift would contain the clearest impressions. So far, fewer than 15 certified examples had been documented by 2024, with only a handful in mint state and bearing all three error components: doubling, edge distortion, and strike alignment shift. Lionel's discovery remained the benchmark. It had been the first, the sharpest, and the most complete version found. His decision to hold on to the coin while its legacy grew paid off. Over the next few years, collectors inquired, dealers made offers, and private bids began to emerge. Initially modest, the offers climbed steadily as new examples failed to match its quality. One museum offered to feature the coin in a rotating exhibit on U.S. mint anomalies. A private collector specializing in late-state quarters offered a considerable sum, recognizing how few modern coins carried such layered flaws. By early 2025, error-classified Oklahoma quarters in worn condition traded for several $1,000s among collectors, but the most pristine examples, those certified in high mint state and exhibiting all error traits, commanded serious attention. Lionel's original coin was appraised within a range that reflected its rarity, preservation, and historical novelty. Today, the coin that once sat unnoticed in a roll from a small bank in Tulsa is valued between $26,000 and $68,000 depending on condition and clarity of its unique characteristics, all from a coin meant to be just another state in a proud series, one that found its voice not in what it depicted, but in the quiet flaws that turned it into something far more enduring.